to our 4th annual Notre Dame Religious Liberty Summit. I'm Professor Stephanie Barclay, a professor here at Notre Dame and the director of our Religious Liberty Initiative. Welcome to scholars, judges, lawyers, religious leaders, government officials, and other friends of religious liberty here tonight. We're delighted to have you with us. It's special to have many of you with us this evening that have been with us since the beginning. This is our 4th annual summit, and especially some of you who were with us last year in London. Now, we admit that South Bend, Indiana is not London. Our St. Joseph River is not the Thames. But I have noticed one striking resemblance this week: the weather. And I apologize on behalf of Notre Dame for the rain, but at least it gave us a chance to use some exciting underground tunnels and golf carts. And I think my colleague, Brendan Wilson, was born for this golf cart moment. So hope you've enjoyed that. Something that is unique about Notre Dame that we don't have anywhere else, and a reason why we want to bring us back to this campus regularly as part of the summit, is the special and unique spirit that you find at Notre Dame. It's that spirit that first drew me to accept Marcus's offer and join the faculty here at Notre Dame Law School. And this week, we hope that as you have discussed difficult and timely issues, that you have felt that spirit, you have certainly added to it with your courage and your vulnerability in pursuit of truth. Thank you for that. In this video, it also mentioned a celebration of religious liberty, which is one of my favorite parts about these religious liberty summits. Later tonight, we're going to celebrate a number of important people, including the Morouns and our award winners, and I'm very excited for that. But if you could just spare me a moment, there are a few other groups of people that I want to celebrate. I'm going to be really obnoxious and ask these people to stand when I mention the groups that they're part of. My colleagues are so humble that they're probably going to be mortified, but please just humor me. So first, I'd like to thank our team that made this event happen. So Mia Tijuana, Jamie Roberts, Lisa Driver, Tanya Robinson, Adriana Galicia, Laura Snydecki, Denise Wagger, Ariane Klingo, and Amber Kirk. Can you all please stand, or if you're already standing, wave. Let's give them a round of applause. Mia, in particular, has been our fearless leader, and the entire team has done a remarkable job. And I recently told Mia that she reminds me of a duck. She, like you, I don't think thought that was going to be a very flattering comparison. But I told her that she's completely calm on the surface, and everything is going smooth, and then beneath the surface, she's kicking her feet 1,000,000 miles an hour so that we can all have such a fantastic time. So thank you, Mia, for all of your work. Second, could I have members of our Notre Dame faculty just stand briefly? And I won't mention all of them, but I do want to give a special thanks to faculty who've done so much to help our Religious Liberty Initiative and the clinic, the Garnetts in particular. And we've had help from Roger, Father Kimes, Father Pat, Paolo, Sharif, and others who have done much to elevate the work of our clinic and our Religious Liberty Initiative. Third, could I have members of the Religious Liberty Initiative board stand? Yeah. We're lucky to have an incredibly talented board that has shared their wisdom, their talents, and their connections with us from the very beginning of our Religious Liberty Initiative. Two of our former prize winners for the Notre Dame Prize for Religious Liberty are with us here tonight, Lord Alton and Commissioner Nurig Turkel. Let's give them a round of applause. Third, could I have the members of our Religious Liberty Clinic stand? So we have, of course, John, our director, Meredith Kessler, who oversees domestic litigation, Brendan Wilson, who oversees our clinic's transactional work with the help of Brett Kavanaugh, not the Brett Kavanaugh you're thinking about, Kimberly Orr, who oversees the work of our international religious persecution and asylum work. And on top of all of that, these fine folks have pitched in to help with events like this summit. Let's give them a round of applause. And finally, I won't ask Marcus to stand. I know my limits, but I want to especially thank Marcus, the founder of our Religious Liberty Initiative, the dean of our law school, the most courageous dean in all of legal academia, a fierce defender of religious liberty. And it is under his leadership and his commitment to religious liberty that this work is possible and will continue in powerful ways. Let's give him a round of applause. Why did I go through this exercise of making these fine people stand up? My children might tell you it's because I delight in embarrassing people. It's not totally true. But it's because I want you to see visually that our religious liberty team at Notre Dame has a deep bench. And the work that I've done is just a small fraction of how the great religious liberty work gets done. So when I think about the future of our Religious Liberty Initiative and compare it to the great things that they have already accomplished, I'm reminded of the immortal words of John Paul Jones, "They have not yet begun to fight." And now I'd like to introduce Rabbi Alexander Goldberg, who will give our invocation. Rabbi Alexander Goldberg is a barrister, a chaplain, and a human rights activist. He is currently the dean of the College of Chaplains and coordinating chaplain at the University of Surrey. Rabbi Goldberg.
I'm surprised there wasn't a shuttle bus to the stage. Sorry. I was supposed to be doing the serious part, sorry. Avinu Shabashamayim, Mikohayenu, Umahasakenu, Shinachatenu, Lidaba, Makoach, Hamalim, Vahadialog, Velibanot, Harut, Datit, Lakolanu. Heavenly Father, our source of life and strength, who has guided us to speak with the power of words and dialogue and to build religious liberty for all. Amen. We gather here today to emphasize the importance of dialogue and conversation in fostering religious liberty. This week's Torah portion, Hukat, teaches us that Hashem commanded Moshe, to speak to the rock and not strike it, to open up its source of water, of freedom, revealing to all of us here the power of words in doing God's work, the words that can bring forth hope, dialogue, understanding, respect, and freedom for all. Today, Hashem, we ask for your blessing upon this conference. May every participant take their learning home and be inspired to engage with open hearts and open minds, striving to create a world where all faiths and beliefs can coexist in peace and harmony. We also ask for your blessing upon this university that hosts us. our hosts, the faculty, those serving us today, those who have won awards tonight, Thomas Burke and Naz Ganea, both sources of light, of rock. May this continue to be a place of wisdom, learning and growth. May it be a beacon of knowledge and a champion of values that we hold dear: respect, understanding and liberty. I shall say the traditional Jewish blessings over the beginning of a meal. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'echon yehi bidvaro. Blessed are you, our God, King of the universe, by whose words all these things came. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei minei mezonot. Blessed are you, Lord, King of the universe, who creates kinds of sustenance and food. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Goldberg, for that beautiful prayer, and thank you all for being here tonight. As you know, I'm Marcus Coleman, the Dean of Notre Dame Law School, and I want to welcome you to the 4th annual Notre Dame Religious Liberty Summit Gala Dinner, highlighted by the award of the 2024 Notre Dame Prize for Religious Liberty to Professor Naz Ganea. I am grateful to God for this gathering, and I give thanks to the University of Notre Dame, its president, our Father Bob Dowd, our provost John McGreevy, for their support of the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Initiative. And I'm deeply grateful to all of our donors, especially Lindsay and Matt Moroun, who believed in us. And I'll say a little bit more about them later, for helping us to make us a real force for religious freedom. But I'm also especially grateful for the leadership of Stephanie Barkley for believing in my vision and taking a leap of faith to come here to Notre Dame to believe that we could build something truly unique in this institution together. The purpose of the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Summit is to facilitate exchange of ideas, discuss issues, and develop strategies to advance the fight for religious freedom in the United States and around the world. This summit and these conversations are central to our mission, which is to promote human flourishing by serving as a source of advocacy, counsel, scholarship, training, fellowship, and hope in defense of the fundamental human right to the freedom of religion of belief for all people. And while I found the conversations here this week stimulating, I was really struck by something someone said yesterday, namely that people of faith are talking past the rest of society when we talk about religious freedom. That in an increasingly secular society, talk about religious freedom isn't just a foreign language. It's a scary language, a threatening language. And over the last few years, defenders of religious freedom have won tremendous victories in courts of law. They were hard fought, and some of them represent decades of hard work by people in this very room. But as I said last year, these legal victories are fleeting if we don't also win in the court of public opinion. We've won victories of the mind. We also need to win victories of the heart. So how do we do this? I think about this question a lot. And those of you who've heard me speak before, you know that I often talk about how every day as we raised our kids, Angie and I would say a prayer with our sons just as they left for school every day, right before they left the door. And we would pray, number one, for miracles, but we also would pray that they would believe in miracles. But most importantly, we wanted them to understand that sometimes God wanted them to be the source of miracles for others. And as they walked out the door, Angie would always say to them, "Be someone's miracle today." Well, I just met someone a month ago who lives his life this way. So in addition to all of the construction you see on the campus today, we're doing some major renovations in the law school. And what that meant for me was that I had to engage in a lot of decision-making about those renovations, including selecting furniture for our common areas. And so as I reviewed the choices, I noticed that there was one company whose products stood out above all of the rest in terms of quality and craftsmanship, but they were competitive on price with all of the others. So I was so struck by the difference that I looked into the manufacturer, and I visited their factory down on the east side of Indianapolis. The company was founded by a businessman and an investor by the name of David Palmer. And he lived in a very affluent, suburb of Indianapolis, Carmel, Indiana. And as a Christian, although he lived in the suburbs, he felt compelled to do service in the inner city. So he volunteered to serve lunches at a homeless shelter in downtown Indianapolis. And whenever he would go in, he would ask the men what they were looking for most. What is it they wanted most? And invariably, they would respond that they wanted a job. Now, as an amateur woodworker, David Palmer thought that anyone could be taught to work with to work with wood. So he decided to start a nonprofit wood furniture company called Purposeful Design. Now, over its 12 years of existence, Purposeful Design has outfitted and supplied furniture to some of the largest office complexes and buildings in Indianapolis, in Indiana, and today all across the country, including the very room that you're sitting in Notre Dame Stadium. But if you ask David Palmer what he's doing, he would tell you that he's not building furniture. He's building men. In its 12 years of existence, Purposeful Design has helped over 300 men who were homeless or drug addicted or just released from prison, help them on to a better way of life. And although they work building furniture, they also have dedicated Bible study and prayer time. And many of the men have used their earnings to buy their first homes. And they did this in an area near the factory, in the most rundown, crime-ridden area of Indianapolis, in a neighborhood called the Swamp. And soon, after these men started moving in there, the Swamp had playgrounds built by the men of Purposeful Design, and the crime dropped to almost nothing after the men of Purposeful Design formed a neighborhood watch group. Soon, grocery stores followed, and schools, and so did David Palmer. David Palmer left his large, luxurious home in Carmel and moved his family into a house in the Swamp. And if you ask David Palmer why he did all of this, he'll tell you that he felt called by God to use his abilities to be of service to those in need. David Palmer doesn't just believe in God. He lives his belief. David Palmer is an example of what's missing from our narrative about freedom of religion. We need to emphasize the good that religion can bring. In my own Christian tradition, it's expressed in the first letter of the Apostle Paul to the Corinthians in chapter 13. And there, St. Paul recounts the gifts of the Holy Spirit of faith, hope, and love. But he goes on to say, if I speak in tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I'm only a noisy gong or cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I'm nothing. If we're to win the case for religious freedom, we must prove to the secular world that the world is a better place with religious freedom or belief, even if they do not believe. We must win this case in the court of public opinion, and that courtroom is in each heart. We cannot win hearts with reason. We must win hearts with love. Don't get me wrong. Law is important, the cases that we've won in court are important. But for America and the world, we must restore faith in faith. While we're fighting the battles over separation of church and state, we must win the battle of separation of church and hate. And we will win that battle with our most powerful weapon, love. As my friend Lewis Brown once said to me, faith is love in action. And as we read James chapter 2, verse 26, faith without works is dead. Religious freedom has produced a lot of love. In the United States, the single largest provider of health care is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is also the largest provider of education in the United States, and those numbers are multiplied by orders of magnitude all around the world, especially in the poorest communities of the world. When someone asked James Cardinal Hickey, the late Archbishop of Washington, why he maintained Catholic schools in the poorest black neighborhoods in Washington, when few, if any, of those children were Catholic, he responded, "We don't educate them because they're Catholic. We educate them because we're Catholic." And we Catholics are not alone. Each year, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints gives away more than $1 billion in 190 countries around the world. And other faith traditions do the same. There are over 1,000 registered Muslim charities that provide relief to the poor. And there are Jewish charities like Moroun and American Jewish World Service that fight hunger, while the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society has helped refugees around the world from Vietnam to Mexico to Syria to Ukraine. These actions are not compelled by law or paid for with taxes. This work is an expression of faith rooted in love. Religion is good for the world, but it can only be good for the world if we are free, not only to believe, but to actually live our beliefs. Religious freedom allows us the freedom to show others that we love them, and so we should. At the end of the day, legal victories in court are not enough. In a politically polarized world, these legal victories will last only as long as people believe that religion is a good thing. 50 years ago, my predecessor, the 7th dean of Notre Dame Law School, a man by the name of Tom Schaefer, used to tell his students a story about a monk in the Middle Ages who traveled to see the building of the Cathedral of Chartres. And as the monk arrived at the cathedral, he met a man cutting stones. And he asked the man, "What are you doing?" And the man replied, "Well, I'm a stonemason. I'm cutting stones." And he walked a little further and he encountered a second man. And that man was cutting wood. And he asked the second man what he was doing. And the second man said, "Well, I'm a carpenter. I'm making a wooden beam." Finally, he encountered a woman who was sweeping the floor with a broom, cleaning up the dust from the construction. When he asked the woman what she was doing, she said, "I'm building a cathedral to the greater glory of God." Each of us is engaged in this fight, and we must realize the bigger picture, that every small effort we make contributes to the larger cause. And that's what David Palmer is doing. He is not just building wood furniture, and he's not just building men. He's building a cathedral to the greater glory of God. And that's what we're doing. Christ commanded us in Matthew 28:19 to go and make disciples of all nations. But how can we do that? How can we succeed in that mission if people are not free to believe? So when we defend and promote religious liberty, we're not merely protecting our most fundamental freedom. We are quite literally building a cathedral to the greater glory of God. Thank you.
Please continue
the portion of our program with our scholarship award. It's my privilege to present our annual scholarship award to Professor Thomas Berg, the James L. Oberstar Professor of Law and Public Policy at the University of St. Thomas. This award is meant to highlight a specific piece of scholarship, something that was written recently in the last few years that makes a substantial impact in the field of religious liberty law. And that certainly fits the bill for Tom's book, Religious Liberty in a Polarized Age, which feels is possibly fitting for the current moment as I can imagine. And I hope you all picked up a complimentary copy of this book. Tom has influenced scholarship in many ways. This is just one of many impactful works of scholarship that he's written. And his scholarship, including work that he's done with Professor Douglas Laycock, has had a significant impact on decisions by the US Supreme Court. I won't give away too many spoilers about the book because we're having a panel discussion about the book that Tom will be on tomorrow. But I'll share one of my favorite insights. Tom points out the rising polarization that we're all familiar with, that we've all been discussing. The fact, for example, that north of 84% of Americans believe that their political opponents are a clear and present danger to American democracy. And of course, that polarization affects everything, including, but not limited to, religious liberty. Tom argues powerfully in his book that protecting religious liberty in the right way, in even-handed, nonpartisan ways, has the ability of reducing not just polarization in the religious context, but across society. So please join me in welcoming Tom to the stage to accept his award.
Thank you, Stephanie. What an honor it is, really, to be recognized by the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Initiative. Dean Marcus Cole, Stephanie Barkley, Nicole and Rick Garnett, clinic lawyers, staff, others involved with the initiative. What you are building here is important and remarkable. It's important because religious liberty protects such a central and perennial feature of human beings, the capacity to seek and respond to the ground of our being, to God, to the deepest structure of existence, and then to live consistent with that reality in love and obedience. And the initiative is remarkable because it marries two features that are so often divorced from each other. On the one hand, intellectual integrity and openness, and on the other hand, commitment and passion. Those of you who have been in the conference just today, I think can already think of examples of both of those virtues in our sessions. So thank you for focusing this summit on the subject of depolarizing religious liberty. As Dean Cole emphasized this morning at the kickoff, for religious liberty to remain strong, it must not be nor be seen as an interest or tool of only one side in a polarized society. So I'm going to try to just briefly connect my book to some of the themes that have already been central to this conference, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. So if you engage me for a minute. For my own book argues that for religious freedom to remain vital, we must make it strong for all faiths, and also think carefully about the boundaries of religious freedom that do need to take into account other important interests while still protecting religious liberty strongly. And that's where intellectual work and careful thinking comes in. My book goes a bit further and argues that religious liberty for all can actually provide a partial remedy to today's polarization. I argue that today we are repeating cycles of conflict that drove the American founders to adopt religious freedom in the first place. Somewhat like the Catholics and Protestants of Reformation-era Europe, each side today fears that its opponents will attack its own way of life. Therefore, it must attack the opponents. The tradition of religious liberty, then, today as then, can help reduce that existential fear and thus the hostility, the perceived need to retaliate, and the cycle of conflict. I focus on America's conflicts, but of course, other nations have their own polarized conflicts, and it's so valuable and again, remarkable for Notre Dame to bring so many people of intellect and passion here from around the world so that we can learn from each other. Finally, now let me just echo, probably, and not with the same force and power, but let me echo what Dean Cole said. Because our society is so divided and and increasingly secular, the long-term health of religious liberty requires defending it with arguments that can cross ideological lines, that can persuade people who are not already predisposed to accepting religious liberty or the particular claim in question. And I try to do a bit of that in the book's arguments. I try to explain, for example, why evangelical Christians have an interest in protecting Muslim Americans' rights, and vice versa. I try to explain the importance of religion for believers by drawing some analogies to the importance of marriage and partner commitments for same-sex couples, and by arguing that we can and should protect both of those, both religious freedom and LGBTQ rights. I hope that those parts of the book can serve as concrete examples of how to argue in ways that increase understanding across our divisions. We'll still disagree, but perhaps we can do it better. We can learn to disagree, as John Inazu says in the title of his book, and also make more progress towards solutions that protect both sides. So once again, thank you for this honor, and I'm just really deeply appreciative and honored to receive it. Thanks very much.
It's now my opportunity to offer our Notre Dame Religious Liberty Prize to my dear friend, Naz Ganea. Naz is a professor of international human rights law and the director of the MSc in International Human Rights Law at the University of Oxford. And she is the UN Special Rapporteur of Freedom of Religion or Belief. There are many qualities that make Naz deserving of this award, the most prestigious religious liberty award we offer at Notre Dame. And I will focus on just three. First, Naz's courage. Perhaps nowhere was Naz's courage more evident to me than her offer on more than one occasion to babysit my children. We have a teenager with all the moodiness that entails, a little boy who talks at the speed of a professional auctioneer, and a 7-year-old girl that could be an escape artist. And when I think about all of the things that Naz has going on, saving the world, holding countries accountable for human rights violations, teaching her classes at Oxford, publishing world-class scholarship, it was incomprehensible to me how much of her time she would also spend for her neighbors and those in her community to lighten their load, to make them feel important and loved and welcomed. Second, Naz has an incredible and a deep commitment to lift up the hands of the weary and those who are struggling. I think some of this comes from her own Baha'i faith. We'll hear more about this when Naz speaks, but I think just some of this is evident from the fact that Naz is donating her $10,000 prize money to the Center for Law and Religion at Baki State University in Nigeria to help them launch a program that will go on to do incredible work in an area where there is so much need. And third, as I mentioned, when it comes to scholarship, it's not an exaggeration to say that Naz is a leading figure in the international study of freedom of religion or belief. Her name is really synonymous with this field, having authored the most comprehensive study and widely recognized compilation on the topic. So these are just a few of her many excellent attributes, but for a better summary, please turn your attention to a brief video.
Naz is firstly one of the world's foremost experts on international law on freedom of religion or belief.
She's had a 30-year academic career where she's supervised over 100 master's or doctoral dissertations and been an incredible mentor to the rising generation of religious liberty and human rights scholars.
She's been out on the forefront, standing with the persecuted, advocating for their rights. She's the right person at the right place to be leading the charge at the United Nations.
There is an endless list. It feels like an endless list when I try to think of them, of the different processes, organizations, meetings that she has been involved with over the years.
Well, Naz is a star. She combines head and heart. She isn't someone who, when she's asked to speak, just comes in, makes her speech and leaves. She'll stay for the day so she can talk with us, listen to us, and guide us in our work.
She has been an outstanding scholar, but she has also the empathy with real people because she endured persecution based on religion or belief from a young age. Her family had to flee Iran when she was a child.
It was during the Shah's period, so before the revolution, where the intensity of persecution against Baha'is really built up and has persisted ever since. You know, I had one friend whose uncle was tortured in prison and later executed, and another whose brother was put in prison. Even when persecuted for generations, our solution is to once again coexist peacefully with one another. My dad was also very intentional about this idea of unity. Several times we went on tours to different parts of the world, and I remember my late aunt would say, "Why are you wasting money taking children around the world? Leave the kids with me and travel with your wife and enjoy yourself." And he would say, "No, I want them to learn that the world is one." So that, you know, if you're a child and you travel to different places, you really see the fundamental oneness of humanity, that people are the same. They have the same quests and desires of security and stability and the growth of their families.
Most recently, of course, she's become Special Rapporteur within the United Nations Special Procedures for freedom of religion of belief, and which she is, in her traditional way, carrying out with great vigor and energy and passion.
The mandate of the Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief is one of the oldest special procedures mandates, and it has been really fundamental in raising voices for victims.
It's the most important tool for a function which is the progressive development of human rights law. This requires agility and contact with civil society and different stakeholders. And for this to happen, you need responsiveness, agility, and combination of the academic knowledge, but also the capacity to listen and human rights diplomacy skills. And Naz is a perfect example of this.
This role matters because the powers that be want to perform well. They want to get a positive review before the Human Rights Council because she'll present a report. And that's leverage. That's an opportunity to push the issue.
There was an IPU meeting in Morocco. IPU is the International Parliamentarian Union. And in that meeting, with more than 200 delegates from several countries, she was invited to speak as the Special Rapporteur.
Sometimes in these conferences, every delegation, every state, every actor says how wonderful things are in their country.
Yesterday was very moving in reflecting the commitment, the good faith, and the interest of all of us for love, unity, peace, and understanding.
And some of the actors who spoke have really very problematic freedom of religion or belief situations. And I just thought, we need a reality check here.
I also have my prepared speech, but you have emboldened me to start with the personal. According to my supreme leader, I am impure and I'm dangerous. You should not mix with me. You should not visit me in my house, and you should certainly not have the tea that I may serve you. According to the laws of my country of origin, my late father was an apostate who deserved to be killed because he changed his faith. I have been unable to visit my country of origin for 44 years. And this Sunday, I will remember 10 women who were killed 40 years ago in the city of my birth, Shiraz. When we look around us, in every society without exception, there are violations happening on the basis of religion or belief.
By bringing her own experience, she forced everyone else in that discussion to be more frank, to be more open about their own perspectives, and challenged parliamentarians who can change legislation to do more in their own countries to protect human rights.
Her important work is really at a structural level. Like, what do the laws mean? What are the systems the laws create that lead to these abuses? And she has the intellectual firepower, the deep knowledge to understand what needs to be changed in a legal environment to create that space to defend those believers or non-believers.
There is her deep sense of humanity and compassion, but also her, should we say, intellectual rigor that she brings to the role and the ability to combine those two in a way that is just simply convincing. It's just difficult for people to argue against what they have to say when there is such passion coupled with such accurate understanding of the law.
For those who hold their religion dearly, they are prepared to sacrifice all of their rights in order to stand up for the truth of this one. It's an enormous privilege to be able to hear from people regarding religion or belief, and it's a unique opportunity to be able to echo it, mirror it, transmit it, and communicate it at the international level. It's the opportunity of engaging every state, small or large, and to bring freedom of religion or belief to the core of the human rights movement. I feel it's the peak of my opportunity to serve, and I will do everything I can to make these months and years in the role meaningful and honest.
I'm going to make you take some pictures. You want to do the award.
Everyone, the Notre Dame Prize for Religious Liberty. Nazmin.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly a profound honor to be awarded the 2024 Notre Dame Prize for Religious Liberty. The only way I can understand and accept your exceptional generosity is to do so in the name of all of those who are struggling with the respect and honoring of their freedom of religion or belief around the world. I'm also grateful to have had this rather unique opportunity to gate crash something akin to my own funeral wake. Though I think the actual wake is bound to be far more critical than you have been today. Witnessing the suffering of those whose freedom of religion or belief is violated around the world is often just too horrific for words. These are occurring 75 years after human rights were recognized as our birthright in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There we were guaranteed the right to freedom of all thought,
conscience, and religion, to have and to change our religion or belief, and to do so without restriction, and certainly without any coercion. This was alongside the guarantee of equality and of all rights, of non-discrimination, to maintain our religious and other characteristics, along with others, for example, indigenous peoples or children, and irrespective of which religion or belief. As Professor Charles Marlick, who was one of the drafters of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, said, the human person's most sacred and inviolable possessions are his mind and his conscience, enabling him to perceive the truth, to choose freely, and to exist. And indeed, we owe the word change in freedom to change religion or belief to Charles Marlick himself. The Notre Dame Religious Liberty Initiative was inaugurated just 4 short years ago, as advanced by Dean Marcus Cole and directed by Professor Stephanie Barclay. We are all witness to some of the groundbreaking work that Notre Dame is doing in this arena. The quality of your work, your supporting teams, all of them are professional and incredible. And clearly the law school and the whole Notre Dame Global University stands behind you in that work. The Religious Liberty Clinic has done remarkable work too in these 4 years. It has defended this freedom through US trial courts, including in the US Supreme Court. The work has included the protection of indigenous sacred sites from destruction, standing for the maintenance of houses of worship and the utilization of property for religious use, the rights of prisoners and their access to chaplaincy in prisons, and the service activities of religious communities. That domestic credit is a real credit to you, that domestic work rather, is a real credit to you, and takes forward a long tradition of legal work in support of this freedom in this jurisdiction. However, the global work that you have done has made you unique amongst all other similar clinics. You've also worked on submissions to UN treaty bodies and in support of victims of human rights violations internationally. I congratulate you on providing these opportunities for your students. This reflects the same internationalist vision of having a global network of 12 campuses around the world. It gives your students a wider horizon and an expanded vision. After all, the vast majority of the victims of freedom of religion or belief will never have access to US courts. With the freedom of religion or belief work increasingly colliding with and benefiting from expertise in commercial law, health law, labor law, immigration, family law, and the fields of business, of development, and of AI, the confidence of your students in navigating complex and contentious issues internationally will stand them in excellent stead and allow them to consider these ethical questions with wisdom and to go into the world with their eyes wide open. Just 4 years on, the Religious Liberty Summit is also firmly in our calendars, and this year has allowed us to discuss so many of the themes that we have enjoyed together, and to do so in a safe space. Depolarizing religious liberty domestically and internationally, finding common ground, learning to disagree, and the other challenges. Again, let's congratulate Dean Marcus Cole for his insight and vision, and in his judicious appointment of Professor Stephanie Barclay as the inaugural director of this initiative. And also, some of this work, of course, is being mirrored back in London too by Professor Mark Hill. Professor Mark Hill's Notre Dame students in London kindly gave me some research assistance towards my first report to the United Nations Human Rights Council in March 2023, and have also done some background research in anticipation of permission for a country visit to Nigeria, and for that, I thank you. For many of us here, freedom of religion or belief is not only a matter of human rights law, but it is also a deeply personal quest for justice for all. This freedom may have made an imprint on us in numerous different ways. As a child, my maternal grandfather was forcibly separated from his father for years until they were reunited in another city in Iran, in Shiraz, 300 miles away from his hometown of Esfahan. His great-grandfather, Sheikh Salman, was pursued and beaten up for being a Baha'i with tremendous regularity. Harassment, displacement, and persecution were so regular that they were just normalized for generations. Jumping to more recent times, my father was never able to receive his medical qualifications from Shiraz Medical University in the early 60s, since he had chosen to change his religion or belief whilst a medical student from Islam to the Baha'i faith. Since he could no longer practice in that country, the family moved to Qatar. He was the first qualified doctor in Qatar, which had not yet gained its independence and was still a British protectorate. 25 years later, though, he left the country due to numerous and endless pressures on him by state actors restricting his medical practice time and again, a policy of discrimination that Qatar has unfortunately built up and routinized against the Baha'is since 1990. I'm joined here tonight by a good friend of mine, Shiva, and I'm so grateful for her being here. We climbed sand dunes on Fridays or went to Dokhan Beach with our families and saw the sun come up. Don't ask us why we went at such an unearthly hour. For all of us, Qatar was the only country we knew. Shiva and her sister were born there, but Shiva's brother-in-law was deported from his only home on flimsy, unsubstantiated charges. She too was unable to return there to support her grieving mum and sister on the passing of her wonderful father. And now 3 generations of 2 families have largely been displaced from that country, merely due to religious intolerance. These are just a few snapshots and insights into just how pointless and unnecessary the sufferings that draw from religious intolerance really are. I spoke of how religious restrictions followed our family around. Thankfully, as the next generations have dispersed in the Czech Republic, Turkey, and the UK, religious discrimination has not followed us. There was that time when a friend and I, first year of university, we went on holiday. We were 2 19-year-old girls, and we were taken to the police station for questioning. I was mistaken for another innocent Baha'i, but we were released. And there was the time that I was blocked from appointment to this mandate 12 years prior, due to 56 states objecting to me taking the role because of my faith. But these are pretty inconsequential. Even the whole family history fades in the world of grievous violations of freedom of religion or belief. Far, far worse is suffered by so many that we cherish and we know. There are those who have been obliged to decide between their life and their truth, and have lost their lives due to their faith. 17-year-old Mona Mahmoud-Nejad was shown in the film, as was 69-year-old cardiologist Dr. Masih Farhangi, my childhood friend, our childhood friend, Shahed's paternal uncle. And of course, so many others are Christians, are Ahmadis, humanists, Jews, Buddhists, Uyghur and other Muslims, Jehovah's Witnesses, indigenous peoples, and so many others around the world. There are those who suffer the international crime of torture, inhuman and degrading treatment. There are those who are subjected to violations of their civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights merely on grounds of their religious or belief belongings. There are those who suffer long years in detention due to the alleged crime of belonging to the wrong kind of religion or belief, for expressing it wrong, for expressing themselves, for seeking respect for their practices, for daring to gather for worship or activities, or their wish to serve wider society. There are families who are separated because of religious intolerance, whose marriages are not recognized, whose children don't get identity cards and suffer for decades, those whose residency is terminated, those whose access to services are curbed or prohibited, again, purely because of their religion or belief. There are those who suffer incredible restrictions on account of their religious belonging, with those restrictions so institutionalized that they enjoy the veneer of legality. This includes the denial of freedom of movement, dispossession of property, and the denial of earning a livelihood. And to what perhaps speaks most loudly to the underlying driver of outright hatred, the restriction or denial of burial rights, the desecration of graves and remains, and the destruction of related sites. These are just a very few of the freedom of religion or belief violations we see around us and which continue to deeply tax our conscience. The UN mandate on freedom of religion or belief, as Michael mentioned, is now in its 38th year, during which there have been almost 50 formal country visits, over 700 formal appeals to states to address violations and incidents, over 130 reports presented at the United Nations, each of them translated into the 6 UN languages, and each report presented in front of 193 states, and the opportunity for an interactive dialogue. This was just a tiny fraction of the work that Special Rapporteurs Ribeiro, Amor, Jahangir, Bielefeld, and Shahid have carried out, and which we've been asked to take forward since 1st of August 2022. Appealing, reporting, investigating, engaging, collaborating, facilitating, inviting, cajoling, advancing, deliberating, persuading, or at least seeking to persuade Dean Cole, along with others, publicly or outside the public eye, in listening, observing, speaking, writing, debating. Every possible effort is taken to lend support to the wonderful work that you all are doing in securing freedom of thought, conscience, and religion for everyone, guaranteed to us as a birthright, but which remains far too remote and illusory for the majority of our world's population. Now, returning to the film that was just shared, to be frank, I have to admit to have been thoroughly embarrassed by the whole thing. We all witnessed the wonderful professionalism and artistry of Jeff Gasser and Jerome Cowan. There's only one grudge I have against them, and that is when I explicitly asked them to use the touch up my appearance beauty filter. In their filming, they simply blanked me out. Nevertheless, they did a magnificent job on the film, and I thank them for their patience, especially when getting me to cooperate was a bit like getting blood out of a stone. This was a eulogy of a film, and I have a question. Is profuse praise a holy or an unholy project? Religions call us to selflessness, to sacrifice, to the station of nothingness or nirvana, to fight the good fight of the inner jihad, that of struggling with oneself, to subdue our egos. But religions also call us to recognize the divine light within us, to seek enlightenment, to continue to strive for our actions to bear testament to our faith, to yield to our higher selves, and it's a never-ending task. So I'm still not sure where prizes fit into this equation. Probably it's okay as long as we take it as an occasion to reflect and to be galvanized to do so much more. The fascinating attraction of freedom of religion or belief
is that it allows us to hone those very same callings, and rather than conviction and commitment to faith breeding any complacency, freedom of religion or belief helps us to be enriched in learning about the very many religions or beliefs that people hold dearly. Rather than only being focused on this freedom for our own, I think we said our own kind, our own tribe earlier today, we find the opportunity to cherish and strive to advance it for everyone. Some may hold that the truth has exclusively been found by them and may tend to overlook the common thread in what so many cherish. But regardless, this freedom joins us in the common need for the journey, for the search of truth and meaning to be kept open and free of coercion. In the words of Dignitas Humanae, which is embodied in the Religious Liberty Initiative, on their part, all men are bound to seek the truth, especially in what concerns God and his church, and to embrace the truth they come to know and to hold fast to it. Freedom of religion or belief expands our vision, allows us to grow in understanding the fascinating realities of a myriad expressions of conscience, and to bring them all in our fold, in the fold of our appeal for justice and respect for human rights. Now, we all hold preconceptions, prejudices, and unconscious biases. International human rights law calls on states to protect the practices of all religions or beliefs from infringement and to protect their followers from discrimination. Such discrimination is defined as any distinction, exclusion, restriction, or preference based on religion or belief, whether intended or not, where it leads to any kind of nullification or impairment in the equal enjoyment of rights and freedoms. Now, this is highly ambitious. As non-state actors, all of us have to do everything we can to bring about the social and cultural conditions that can actually make this possible. But of course, religions call us to far higher ethical standards. Preference, in religious speak, is preferring others to ourselves, not ourselves over others. Forgiveness and love, as you mentioned so beautifully just earlier, goes beyond a recognition of equal rights. Protection from discrimination is a very low ethical bar. Instead, the focus is on accompanying others so that each and every soul can flourish, since all have intrinsic nobility. Now, the award goes with a generous cash award, and I'm delighted to channel it to the students at Sazu University, formerly known as Bauchu State University, Center for Law and Religion Studies, which was inaugurated in early 2023 and is the first center of its kind in northern Nigeria. Professor Ahmad Salisu Garba is known to many of us. He served as the Deputy Vice Chancellor of that university. The Center for Law and Religion Studies Development was supported by the Norwegian Center for Human Rights, which also supports its academic fellowship program for training academic staff across Nigerian universities. Their work has been boosted by another grant from the Brigham Young University for teaching law and religion studies. But this prize money from Notre Dame is the first grant that will be committed to the students in carrying out clinical work to advance freedom of religion or belief related cases and providing them with travel grants for related research and advocacy. Let me end with my respect for so many of the members of the Board of Advisors of the Religious Liberty Initiative and the previous awardees of this prize, Nuri Turkal, Mary Ann Glendon, and of course, Lord David Alton. There's obviously a blip this year. On behalf of the next generation, my amazing daughters, Amelia and Layli, and delightful nieces and nephew, Noor, Neda, Sana, and Nabil, to all the next generations that need to take the mantle from us soon, I express my appreciation to initiatives such as this one from Notre Dame that allow students to delve into the practice of standing up for others at home and further afield,
This commitment, nurtured in them, allows them and all of us to live the spirit of Notre Dame's visionary motto, life, sweetness, hope. Thank you for your support for this great initiative and to all of us for being here tonight. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Professor Ahmed Salisu Garba, currently the founding director of the Center for Law and Religion Studies at Bauchi State University. Our center has been promoting academic scholarship on law and religion studies, and specifically with focus on freedom of religion and belief. We have been involved in workshops for capacity building workshops for public officers and students as well. And we've also been participating in smaller conferences around Nigeria. So I would like to use this opportunity on behalf of my own university, the Governing Council, the Vice Chancellor, the Dean of Law at the Faculty of Law, and all the staff at Center for Law and Religion Studies. We are thanking Professor Nazila Ghania for recommending us for this donation. I equally want to thank Dean Marco's Cole of the Notre Dame University and also the Religious Liberty Initiative for agreeing with Ghania to allow this donation to come to us. This donation definitely will help us in our operation, especially supporting our students to participate in conferences or workshops associated with freedom of religion and belief in and out of the country. We will make sure we utilize the money for the purpose for which it is sent to us. Thank you very much for the support.
Thank you, Naz, for that beautiful speech. And you're such a fitting recipient of this award. And we are honored to be able to honor you with it. So thank you for agreeing to receive it. So I have the opportunity right now to tell you yet another story. But this story is important to me because this story really changed my life. About 25 years ago, I was a young professor at Stanford University, and I would read the newspaper every morning, an actual physical newspaper. And one morning, I opened up the San Mateo County Times. And much to my surprise, before I even started reading the newspaper, on the front page of the newspaper was a photograph of 3 Catholic nuns in habits. And I hadn't seen nuns in habits since I was in Catholic elementary school. So it intrigued me, and I read the story. And as I read the story was about how a group of nuns who lived in a convent in San Mateo County, California, there were 8 of them living in the convent. They were approached by 6 young women who were interested in joining their order. And the nuns of the order were not sure what to do about this. The convent simply wasn't large enough to embrace 6 new members. So they did what any of us would do if we were enlarging our family. They hired an architect, and they took the plans and submitted it to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors for approval. And the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors looked at the plans and said, this land is too good. This is literally a quote from the newspaper. This land is too good to be wasted on prayer. It was lots of green open space in the center of an urban area of San Mateo County. And so the county took that property by eminent domain and sold it to a developer. And that story in the newspaper just outraged me. I didn't know what to do about it. I was a business lawyer. I wasn't an eminent domain lawyer or a property lawyer. I wasn't a religious liberty lawyer. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as religious liberty law at the time. But I was outraged that someone could think so little of my faith or anyone's faith that they would just take their property because it wasn't being used for something that they thought was important. And I carried that in my heart. And then when Michael McConnell came to Stanford and wanted to start a religious liberty clinic, with Jim Sony, together we started that, the oldest religious liberty clinic in the country. And then 5 years ago, on my birthday, I had to pinch myself because I was sitting on my birthday 5 years ago in the office of the president of the University of Notre Dame, a place I never imagined I would ever be. And I was being interviewed by Father John Jenkins. And he said to me, if I make you the dean of Notre Dame Law School, what would you do? And without missing a beat, I said immediately, I would start a religious liberty clinic. Because that is the most important issue facing this country. That is the most important issue facing the world. And religious liberty is the basis of all of our freedoms. And Notre Dame is not in the conversation. Notre Dame not only needs to be in the conversation, Notre Dame needs to be leading that conversation. So Father John decided he would give me an opportunity to say that to a lot of people who are interested in Notre Dame. And 5 years ago, I gave a speech and I told that same story to an audience. And it's very clear to me today that the Holy Spirit was in that room, because 2 people sitting in that room heard my speech, they heard my story, they heard my passion for this, and they believed me. They heard my plan, they heard what I wanted to do, and they heard, most importantly, what I thought was possible. And those 2 people were Lindsay and Matt Moroun. And I get choked up when I think about it, because there was no reason in the world why they should have trusted me. I was not a constitutional law scholar. I had never written a word about religious liberty, but my faith and this issue means everything to me. And so I cannot thank you enough for believing in me, believing in my vision. We would not be here today if you had not taken a leap of faith and saw what we were capable of doing and trusting me. And with your gift and the resources that you entrusted to us, we were able to literally change the world, or to start to change the world. And we're going to continue to do that. And so from tonight on, the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Clinic will now be known as the Lindsay and Matt Moroun Religious Liberty Clinic.
Father Dowd, Dean Cole, distinguished guests and attendees, Lindsay and I are grateful to God and our involvement in this endeavor, in this Religious Liberty Clinic, and this is all for His glory. Freedom of religion is part of our nation's foundation and core to millions of Americans. It's certainly critical to all of us here. Lindsay and I love our Catholic faith and work and struggle to keep at it and keep it the center of our lives. We've planted lots of seeds in our children and have prayed and continue to pray that they grow and faith grows in them and faith grows around us. For a number of years, we co-chaired Young Life Grosse Pointe, the purpose of which is to introduce and reintroduce Jesus to middle schoolers, high schoolers, while mostly just having fun. If the young person wants to take it further, they're encouraged to do so in a church. But protecting religious freedom doesn't mean just your religion. All beliefs and lives carried out according to those beliefs must be protected. To allow an assault or an infringement upon one means yours is next. Our company operates a logistics facility for Stellantis in Detroit. We sequence and meter the vast majority of parts for the Jeep Grand Cherokee plant. We employ 300 Bengalis there, and I can tell you their religious liberty means everything to them. And in recognition of that, we have modified certain aspects of the operation to accommodate their religious practices. For example, we bring in management from all over the Midwest to keep the plant running when our staff takes off for Eid to celebrate. The majority of Canadian truck drivers are from South Asia, and many of them cross the Ambassador Bridge regularly. Our duty-free store at the border is often utilized by them for prayer. Regularly, our job fairs are held at local churches for drivers and laborers we need. Most recently, we held a job fair at the Kingdom Covenant Church in Detroit, our neighbor to our ready-mix concrete plant that we operate. The church's leadership provides us advice and their own list of names to look out for. It would be easy to take this liberty for granted, but it is under attack in direct and subtle ways. Notre Dame shines brightly as an example of a religious and premier academic institution. It's famous for this position. Notre Dame had to do this. At my first religious liberty event with Lindsay, the very first one, I asked Father Jenkins if he feared retaliation from the Chinese government because the Notre Dame awarded the Religious Liberty Prize to a Uyghur. I believe he's here tonight. There he is, Nuri Turkle. He had been oppressed himself, but was also an outspoken and is an outspoken critic of China's human rights violations. Father Jenkins' resolve left me assured that Notre Dame, in its clinic's advocacy for religious liberty, was as strong as steel. Lindsay and I saw the fit for ourselves. We were presented the opportunity to support law students and clinic leaders and professors to fight back in court if they must in the name of the University of Notre Dame. That sounded really cool to me. Fighting with the good guys. We seized the opportunity. We are blessed by this position and honored to be a part of the law school's clinic as it leverages the talents and zeal of its leaders and law students to protect this foundational freedom. We are further encouraged by the attendees and distinguished guests of this conference in the seriousness of their concern for this sacred freedom. It is Lindsay's privilege and my privilege to financially support this counterattack so boldly and courageously undertaken by Dean Cole and Father Dowd. Thank you, Marcus.
Stephanie, you're not going to see this in your run of show, but we have one more presentation to make. As the first and founding director of the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Initiative, Stephanie Barkley has been invaluable in bringing together people from all across the United States and all around the world to focus their efforts on the fight for religious freedom.
Stephanie was, I think, influential in all of us moving here and making the RLI our work home.
She had great vision for what this would be.
Stephanie has built a program and an infrastructure here that I think will last the life of Notre Dame Law School.
She combined scholarly achievement at the really highest levels of academic work with this really attractive and energetic organizing that she did to put on conferences, to help get the clinic really underway in a big way. And there are not that many people who combine the talents of scholar and organizer as brilliantly as she did.
Marcus really found the ideal person to lead the Religious Liberty Initiative with Stephanie. She's an outstanding scholar, an outstanding teacher, and an outstanding litigator. And the truth is, the religious liberty movement needs all three of those.
She was named 3 times at Beckett Fund as one of Washington, D.C.'s super litigator rising stars. But she also proved that her academic skills were equal to her litigating skills. And I wish that she will continue her influence and look forward to seeing more and more of her writing and her spirited commentary.
Stephanie has hired some excellent attorneys to work in the clinic, and so even though Stephanie is leaving us, unfortunately, I know the clinic is in great hands with all these amazing lawyers who are really mission-oriented and here to help our students become great lawyers.
Stephanie, we wish you all the best in the world. We are so grateful for everything that you've done for Notre Dame and for the fight for religious freedom. And we know that you're going to continue to do great things in your next role. And now we'd like to hear a few words from our president, Father Bob Dowd.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Marcus, and thank you all. It's wonderful to be here once again. We're so glad to be hosting you all here at Notre Dame. We're so proud of the Religious Liberty Initiative. We're so grateful for the amazing work of the Lindsay and Matt Moroun Religious Liberty Clinic. This is an incredible opportunity to be grateful, to express gratitude, and to rededicate ourselves to the important work of promoting religious liberty, the religious liberty that allows for human flourishing. I want to extend my special thanks to Dean Marcus Cole, but also to Professor Stephanie Barclay. Thank you for your incredible work. We're going to miss you around here, but we know, as Marcus said, that you're going to be doing great things. We also are really grateful for the entire staff of the Religious Liberty Initiative. I want to thank Mia Tiwana, Jamie Roberts, and the entire team. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your participation in this important summit. As I mentioned earlier today, it's a diverse group of people from a variety of faith backgrounds and people from different parts of the world. And we're so proud and grateful that you're here at Notre Dame. There have been, I know, many rich discussions today, and there's more to come tomorrow with our keynote address by Bishop Kevin Rhodes. So I pray for many, many blessings on our continued conversations. I want to add, in a special way, a congratulatory wish to our Notre Dame Religious Liberty Prize awardee this year, Nazila Ganea. We're so grateful for your inspiring work. It truly is a call to action, but it's also a call to understanding. I was really struck by your words, and it really is about deepening our understanding and leaving our comfort zones to understand what others are going through. We can't help but think about the many people in our world who suffer because of a lack of religious liberty. And so we so appreciate your efforts to promote greater respect for human dignity and the human freedom, the freedom of religion that would allow for the flourishing of the human person. So thank you for inspiring us. And thank you for honoring us by allowing us to honor you. So thank you. It's also wonderful to have two previous Notre Dame Religious Liberty Prize Award winners here with us. Nuri Turkal, thank you very much for being here. And Lord David Alton, it's an honor to have you back at Notre Dame. Thank you for joining us these days. I really want to also thank Thomas Berg. Thomas, your great work is truly exceptional. Your leadership in helping us to navigate and preserve religious freedom amidst political polarization is very timely, very important. It's very needed. So thank you for your great work. And I really hope that there will be ways into the future for you to interact with our students and our faculty. I know that we have much to learn from you. So thank you very, very much. And finally, I want to offer special thanks to the Moroun family. Matt and Lindsay, we're so grateful for your generosity. And we know how much your faith means to you. You said as much here just a few minutes ago. We heard you speak so eloquently about your faith. And we know that that faith is what animates you. It animates everything you do in your work, in your philanthropy, and throughout your life. In every way, I think your faith is something that is bedrock for you. And we're so grateful for your support of Notre Dame's mission, your support of the Lindsay and Matt Moroun Religious Liberty Clinic. I'm excited about the future and what we're going to be able to do on behalf of religious liberty and in defense of the dignity of the human person. As you've heard, I'm sure, many times over the last few days, and many of you are aware of this, that the work of our Religious Liberty Initiative and of our Religious Liberty Clinic is so important. It's more important than ever. Your work on behalf of religious liberty is more important than ever. In 2021, a Pew Research study found that government restrictions on religion had reached a new peak, and that social hostilities against religion are also at record levels. Indeed, I know that you enjoyed lunch and a performance highlighting Uyghur cuisine and culture. And the story of the Uyghur Muslims is but one example of terrible persecution that many people in our world are experiencing and suffering through. It's heartbreaking. And so we have more work to do. As I said this morning in my opening remarks, I want to reiterate this, that we here at Notre Dame are inspired by our Catholic faith to support religious liberty and to promote greater respect for religious liberty across the world. We know that this is the key to human flourishing, and so we are going to be more dedicated to this than ever. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us this week here at Notre Dame. And my hope and prayer is that the seeds planted during these conversations will truly bear fruit in the weeks, the months, and the years ahead as we work together to be a force for good, a force for human liberty, for religious liberty, and human flourishing. So now let us take a moment just to pray as we draw our evening to a close. Loving God, we thank you for the many blessings in our lives, and we thank you for gathering us here. We thank you for the tireless efforts of so many in this room to promote greater respect for religious liberty, for the dignity of the human person, for the freedom that allows for human flourishing. We pray that you bless our efforts, that you bless our time together. In a special way, we pray that you bless those who are experiencing persecution because of their faith. Help them to experience your presence. Console them and encourage them. Bless us with understanding and wisdom, compassion and courage, faith, hope, and love. And we make this prayer in your great name. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, everybody. And God bless you all.
So thank you, Father Bob, and thank you all for being here. This concludes the formal portion of our program, but we have dessert and cocktails out in the foyer. I guess it would be the hallway behind the football stands. But please enjoy yourselves, and thank you.